Okay, open your books if you have them, which you should, to page 59. This is the chapter Shadow of the Past. And I'm going to back up just a little bit to reiterate some of what we left off with on Thursday. Gandalf tells Frodo that Sauron has probably heard of the name Baggins, has probably heard of the Shire, and knows that Baggins has something important. And Frodo says, "But this is terrible, far worse than the worst that I imagined from your hints and warnings. O Gandalf, best of friends, what am I to do? For now I am really afraid. What am I to do? What a pity that Bilbo did not stab that vile creature when he had a chance." Now I think you have to understand what Frodo says here about Gollum in the context of what Gandalf said earlier about Gollum, that Gollum is related to hobbits. Okay? And Frodo said, I can't believe that, it's impossible. Gandalf says it's a sad tale, and he knows more about the history of hobbits, etc. So all of that lies behind, what a pity that Bilbo did not stab that vile creature when he had a chance. Gandalf. Pity? It was pity that stayed his hand. Pity and mercy. Not to strike without need. That was the mercy. He didn't need to strike Gollum. All right? So he didn't. It was pity how Bilbo felt about Gollum. Bilbo saw Gollum and he saw, man, he is wretched. He is miserable. Pity and mercy, not to strike without need. And he has been well rewarded, Frodo. Be sure that he took so little hurt from the evil, that is the ring, and escaped in the end because he began his ownership of the ring so, with pity. The ring didn't have as much effect on Bilbo because of how Bilbo took possession of the ring, with pity. All right? It's pretty important. I'm sorry, but I'm frightened. And I do not feel any pity for Gollum. Well, Frodo at least is being honest. Okay? The reason he doesn't feel any pity is because he's scared. Gandalf has told him, Sauron wants the One Ring. You have it. Gollum gave you up, essentially, to Sauron. Frodo is quaking in his boots. All right? That's why he doesn't feel pity. Gandalf, you've not seen him. Gandalf just kind of, notice we're told, broke in. Frodo wasn't done talking. Gandalf shuts him down. You've not seen him. The implication is, if you'd seen Gollum, you too would feel pity. No, and I don't want to. I don't want to what? I don't want to see him? Yes. I don't want to pity him? Yes. Why? Why doesn't Frodo want to pity Gollum? What will that demand on Frodo's part?
Doesn't it mean that he has to acknowledge that Gollum was once like him?
Yeah, partially. What else? It means Frodo will have to have some compassion for Gollum. He doesn't want to feel that. He doesn't want to feel pity. He wants to have Gollum right where he can be angry at him, where he can hate him. It's a lot easier to have an enemy that you can kind of put on a pedestal and always hate than it is to try to do what? Reconcile. No, and I don't want to. I can't understand you. Do you mean to say you and the elves have let him live on after all those horrible deeds? Notice the implication behind those words. You and the elves have let him live on. What does that word let mean? Allowed. So what does that suggest about Gandalf in relation to Gollum? He has power over him. That Gollum merely lives at Gandalf's wish. Okay? After all those horrible deeds, what's he saying? What does Gollum deserve? Well, he's going to tell us. Now, at any rate, he is as bad as an orc and just an enemy. He deserves death. Okay, he is as orc. What are orcs? Anybody know?
Aren't they elves that were
Elves that were tortured and twisted by Morgoth. Got to go back to the Silmarillion. Okay, that are twisted in such a way that orcs are no longer good. There is no good left in orcs. Orcs aren't like, Darth Vader. There's a little bit of good still in Vader. None of that in orcs. They've been so foully twisted and then bred over the eons that there's no good left. So when he says, now at any rate, he's as bad as an orc, the only thing an orc is good for is killing. And what I mean by that is, the only reason an orc exists is so that I may kill it. Not the only thing an orc is good for is that it can go out and kill. Okay? He's as bad as an orc and just an enemy. What's that word just mean?
there's nothing wrong with them.
Exactly. He's only an enemy. That's his only reason for being, is to be my enemy. Notice Frodo has just reduced Gollum to, or even just reduced he and Gollum to mere enemies, mere opposites. Okay? That's it. He deserves Gandalf. Deserves it? I dare say he does. In other words, you're right, Frodo. He does deserve to die. But Gandalf doesn't stop there. It'd be a whole lot easier if Tolkien had just shut up at that point. But he doesn't. Many that live deserve death. And some that die deserve life. Can you give it to them? Many that live deserve death. If I were to start throwing out a bunch of names, I'll bet many of you would say, yep, that person deserves to die. Or that person deserves to die. Some that die deserve life. Can you give it to them? Why does he ask that? Can you give it to them? What is he suggesting? He's suggesting, who the hell do you think you are? Because what is Frodo saying? I have the power. And who should live and who should not live? Okay? Many that live deserve death. Bin Laden? He doesn't live anymore. What happened when SEAL Team 6 did get him? Personally, I was glad that they finally got him, but I was disgusted at the action of many Americans. Throwing parties, going out, cheering in the streets. My opinion, not the action. Yes, he was, quote unquote, brought to justice. But, and I think Gandalf is suggesting this also. No one's death should be an occasion for joy. Okay? Why? Because there are some that die who also deserve life. What did it take to get bin Laden? It took a lot of deaths. It took a lot of wrongful deaths. I mean, bin Laden's dead and gone. There are lots of people still wrongfully dying in our quote-unquote, well, I can't call it that anymore. I was going to say war on terror, but it's no longer a war on terror. What does the Obama administration now call this? A foreign contingency operation or something like that. Okay? we've got drones for Afghanistan and various other places, and they go in to take out some terrorists, and what inevitably happens? They don't only hit terrorists, they hit innocents. Okay? Some that die deserve life. Can you give it them? Then do not be too eager to deal out death in judgment. Now, this is a passage, I think this is Tolkien speaking directly through Gandalf. What does he mean, do not be too eager to deal out death in judgment? Is he saying no capital punishment? I don't think so. Notice the all-important words. Too eager. Frodo's, ready to have the trial, be the prosecutor, be the judge, be the jury, and be the executioner. Now. All right? Do not be too eager to deal out death in judgment. Why? For even the very wise cannot see all ends. Who does he mean by the very wise? Me, Gandalf. I can't see the end. Well, so what? What does he mean, all the ends? That word ends has two meanings. It means like the end of something, the conclusion, but it has meaning. As in the phrase, the ends don't justify the means. Okay? In which case it means the purpose of something. For even the very wise cannot see all ends. They cannot see all eventualities, how all things will work out. Nor, he seems to be suggesting, to see all purposes, all reasons for why things occur. And then look at what he says after that. I have not much hope that Gollum can be cured before he dies, but there is a chance of it. Take what Tolkien says in the foreword about applicability and apply that. What is he saying? Pick a famous murderer on death row somewhere. Charles Manson. Completely out of his gourd. Okay? Just totally whacked out. Gandalf is suggesting, do not be too eager to deal out death in judgment. Why? Because Charles Manson might be cured before the end. Even Bin Laden might have been cured before the end. Even Stalin might have been cured before the end. Even Mao, Castro, might be cured. Okay? Even Hitler. It's a little unsettling, isn't it? When you think about it in those terms. Okay? What's he suggesting? Yeah, Gollum's done a lot of bad stuff. Gollum is a almost thoroughly rotten individual. But he might be cured. What does the word cured mean? Louder?
Redeemed.
Redeemed? What else? What do you do when you cure ham? Or you cure meat? You preserve it. You save it. Okay? What does it mean if someone needs to be cured? What obviously is wrong?
Sick.
They're sick. They're unhealthy. So another meaning of cured is to be made whole, to be made well. I have not much hope that Gollum can be made well before he dies, but there is a chance of it. So, why does Gandalf care whether or not Gollum is made whole or healthy before he dies? Well, to answer that question, we'd have to jump to just about the end of the novel, where Gandalf has a little conversation with Denethor, steward of Gondor. And Denethor talks about being steward of Gondor and all that entails. And Gandalf says, I'm a steward too. I'm not a steward of your little puny kingdom, however. I'm a steward of what? All of Middle-earth. He cares for all living things. Yes, even Gollum. And when I say he cares for Gollum, what does that mean? He wants ultimately what is best for Gollum. He's not going to stop here with just talking about Gollum being cured. He's going to offer this cure, okay, or this curing opportunity for health, this opportunity of regaining wholeness. The reason I'm emphasizing this is we're going to see the same exact in Harry Potter. Okay? He's going to offer it to others in The Lord of the Rings. In fact, he's going to offer really, really, really bad guy, Saruman. And he's going to offer it more than once. He's going to offer it again and again and again and again. And you get this implication that with Gandalf, it's not a matter of second chances. It's a matter of 159th chances, and then 860th, and 861st, that until someone takes their dying breath, they can still what? Change. They can still change. Now, why does Tolkien throw this in there? Because he's Catholic. Because this is central to his mentality. People can change, period. Doesn't have to mean, a little child. It means even old dogs can learn new tricks. Even thoroughly rotten, despicable people can be what? Less rotten? Less despicable? Doesn't Rowling show us that in a character in her novel? I have not much hope that Gollum can be cured before he dies, but there is a chance of it. And he is bound up with the fate of the ring. My heart tells me that he has some part to play. Yet, for good or ill, the first part of that's good, right? He has some part to play for good. Frodo might go, oh, well, that's encouraging. But then he has to say, or ill. That is not encouraging. Before the end. And when that comes, the pity of Bilbo may rule the fate of many, yours not least. Notice, the pity of Bilbo may rule the fate. He doesn't say is or will. Why? Because even the very wise cannot see all ends. Gandalf doesn't know for certain that it's going to be Gollum who bites the ring and falls into the, cracks of Mount Doom. He hasn't looked into his crystal ball, his palantir, and seen that. He's not like the Emperor, Everything is not proceeding as he has foreseen. He thinks Gollum has some role to play. He's not sure. In any case, he says, we did not kill him. Why? He will tell us later on, much later on. He doesn't desire power over anyone. The fairy story essay where Tolkien talks about, the difference between enchantment and what a magician does. The magician seeks power, seeks domination. Gandalf is not a magician. Okay? What does he seek? Shared enrichment. What does he want to do to Gollum? He wants to help him. He wants to cure him. No, we didn't kill him. Because what would happen if he killed Gollum at this point? Well, not only would the novel be a whole lot shorter, would Gollum have any chance for being cured? No. He is very old and very wretched. That's, Gandalf is trying to get Frodo to empathize a little bit. The wood elves have him in prison, but they treat him with such kindness as they can find in their wise hearts. Frodo. All the same, even if Bilbo could not kill Gollum, he still doesn't get it. Could Bilbo have killed Gollum? Oh yeah, he definitely could have. He should say, even if Bilbo would not. Because the word would means wished. Even if he wished not to kill Gollum. I wish he had not kept the ring. That is Bilbo. Why did he keep it? I wish he had never found it and that I had not got it. I wish. Well, I wish I were a millionaire. I wish I were teaching at Oxford. No offense. Why? Because I love Oxford, the city. We all have wishes. Unfortunately, wishes aren't reality. Why did you let me keep it? Why didn't you make me throw it away or destroy it? Gandalf. Let you make you? Hello? Frodo? Haven't you been listening? Says, come on. Try. You try and destroy it. Because I know the ring was dangerous. Frodo, well, I would have done away with it. Really, would you? How? Well, I can melt it. Go ahead, try. Put in your little puny, wimpy, hobbity, midgety fire. Come on, see if it'll burn. Frodo pulls the ring out, and he can't even let go of it. Gandalf laughs, we're told. Grimly. Why? What does this little scene already show us? I mean, we're 60 pages in. You too, Frodo, cannot easily let it go, nor will to damage it. He already can't let it go. Gandalf just told us. So what makes us think 1,000 or 1,200 pages is going to make it any easier for him to let it go? When he's going to have it close to his skin and he's going to be using it. The more you use it, the more effect it has. I couldn't make you, he says, except by force, and that would break your mind. He says even if you used a heavy sledgehammer, you wouldn't even dent in it. Your fire wouldn't even melt ordinary gold. He said, there aren't even any dragons around anymore that have a fire hot enough to do that. Not even Ancalagon the Black, the father of all dragons. He says, no, there's only one way to do it. Find the cracks of doom in the depths of Orodruin, the fire mountain, and cast the ring in there. If you really wish to destroy it, to put it beyond the grasp of the enemy forever. Okay? If you really wish to destroy it, Frodo replies, I do really wish to destroy it. Notice the agent. I do. Oh, well, to have it destroyed. He moves from very strong active voice, I wish to destroy it, to very strong passive voice, or wish to have it destroyed. What's the difference between active and passive voice? In active voice, the agent is clear. In passive voice, it could be anybody. I ran over the girl on the way to school. The girl was run over on the way to school. I take no blame for that action. It could have been anybody that did it. Okay? Notice Frodo realizes what he's saying. I'm not made for perilous quests, but he just said, I do really wish to destroy it. No, not me. I wish I'd never seen the ring. Why did it come to me? Why was I chosen? Why me? God, Eru. Why me? How often do people ask that kind of question? The Good Friday tornado that came through here in 2010. If you've ever been over on Gresham Park Lane off of Medical Center Parkway, the thing took out most of the houses down that street, and there's just one house just sitting there. That was a stinking big tornado, an F4. At points, it was a quarter-mile wide. But like down there, it roared down, ripped all these houses out, and then suddenly it appeared and it goes, zip, and pops up, comes over, drops back down, and left one house entirely intact. It's like not even a leaf off a tree went anywhere. Now, those people, I imagine, I don't know this for sure, but I imagine they probably felt what's called survivor syndrome. Why me? Why wasn't my, because they're looking at all their friends and neighbors and they lost everything. Why me? Gandalf, such questions cannot be answered. Notice he doesn't come up with some nice, pat little Christian-y answer. Oh, it's the will of a Iluvatar. This is supposed to happen for your benefit. No. Such questions cannot be answered. Why did I get cancer? Next question. Cannot be answered. You did. Suck it up. Deal with it. Okay? You may be sure that it was not for any merit that others do not possess. Not for power or wisdom at any rate. In other words, you weren't chosen, Frodo, because of your great strength, Schwarzenegger and a little midget body. No. Nor wisdom. He's not Solomon. But you have been chosen. And you must therefore use, now he gives us three things. Not just strength and wisdom. Now you must use such strength and heart and wits as you have. Wits, common sense. But I have so little of any of those things. Why? Because he's so little. But what else is he saying? I'm not strong. I have few wits. I have little heart, meaning I'm a coward. I see danger and I run away, run away. Will you not take the ring? Notice that. Here, Gandalf, O great and powerful, will you not take the ring? Gandalf springs to his feet. No. Why? What has just happened? This is the ring trying to get Gandalf to take it. With that power, I should have power too great and terrible. Notice that. It is possible to have too much power. Notice he doesn't say with that power I would have power great and terrible. Why? Because he already does. No, he'd have too great and terrible a power. Over me the ring would gain a power still greater and more. Do not tempt me. I think Frodo's going, I wasn't tempting you. I just offered you the ring. For I do not wish to become like the Dark Lord himself, yet the way of the ring to my heart is by pity. Pity for weakness and the desire of strength to do good. The desire of strength, that is, to have strength, to have power. What? To do good. What is he saying? He's saying the ring cannot be used for good purposes. Do not tempt me. I dare not take it, not even to keep it safe, unused. The wish to wield it would be too great for my life. I shall have such need of it. The wish to wield it would be too great for my strength. Here's what differentiates Gandalf at this point in this novel, at this age, from the young 17-year-old Albus Dumbledore. The young 17-year-old Albus Dumbledore would have said, yeah, I'll take it. Why? To do good. Okay? Let me use this. Ends do not justify the means. What are the ends Gandalf is talking about? To do, ultimately, what does that mean? Defeat Sauron. The ends do not justify the means. What means that he could use to do good? Take the ring. He is saying that to do this, to have this as one's ultimate goal, does not justify the use of this. And now I think Tolkien wants us to apply that. And that's why he talks about applicability. So what is he saying? No matter what the goal is, the means you use to achieve that goal have got to be with the goal. In other words, the means used to achieve the goal must be as good as the goal itself. So, if we were the only people that existed in the world, and this half of the class had cancer, take it back. This half of the class had some kind of communicable disease that the rest of us didn't want to get. The ultimate goal of us not getting sick, that is good, correct? Yes. But if the only means to maintain our health is to kill all of them, would that means justify this ends? No. So you can take from that and start applying it to all kinds of current bioethical concerns about fetal tissue transplants, stem cell research, whole variety. I mean, if we were really serious about wanting to, solve a lot of illnesses or perceived illnesses, what is one place we could turn for research other than, human guinea pigs? I mean, we could, frankly, unearth a lot of the Nazi files that the Nazi doctors performed on Jewish subjects, because they did amazing research. They did it all forced on their Jewish subjects, okay? But they learned, and one thing that happened as a result of the Second World War was those files were sealed, because the West said we're not going to benefit from the suffering caused by all those people. Okay? That's the ends did not justify those means. Gandalf goes to the window, looks outside. He sees Sam. And notice what he tells Frodo. He doesn't say, Frodo, you must take the ring. You must leave the Shire. Come on, hurry up. Like in the film. The decision lies with you, but I will always help you. In other words, your decision, Frodo. What are you going to do? You can keep the ring. You can stay here. You can hope that Sauron will never find you, and I will help you. I will help you bear this burden as long as it is yours to bear, but we must do something soon. Okay? And notice, Frodo decides to leave. Frodo says, I should like to save the Shire if I could. Though there have been times when I thought the inhabitants too stupid and dull for words, and have felt that an earthquake or an invasion of dragons might be good for them. But I don't feel like that now. In other words, before, meaning when there was no threat, when there was no real danger involved, he thought an earthquake or a plague of dragons would be good for them. Before I ever experienced a tornado, I thought Yeah, I'd like to see a tornado. That'd be totally cool. Not really, not anymore. Earthquakes I'm not afraid of. I've been growing up in California, I'm used to earthquakes. Don't like those big cloudy things from the sky sucking everything up around me. Okay? I don't feel like that now. I feel that as long as the Shire lies behind safe and comfortable, I shall find wandering more bearable. Notice what is in his assumption. How's the Shire going to be? Safe, comfortable, unchanged. Frodo is assuming that if he has to go wandering, at least the Shire will kind of remain frozen in time. Wrong assumption. Nothing remains frozen in time. So he says, of course, I thought of going away, thought of seeing Bilbo. And Gandalf says, you hobbits are amazing. I never imagined you'd come up with this. He goes, but you don't need to go alone. You can take some that you trust. And he pulls out Sam Gamgee through the window. Sam's been overhearing. Sam's heard talk about elves, and he's just, in love with elves. And he realizes he now gets to go along with Mr. Frodo. Where is he going with Mr. Frodo, though? To hell and back. Okay? This is pretty important, because later on in the novel, Sam's going to tell Frodo, as they're making their way up Cirith Ungol, he's going to say, Mr. Frodo, if we'd really known where we were going, we might have chosen differently. Okay. So, we get chapter 3. 3 is company, which I'm going to skip most of. And they make their way, Sam and Pippin and Frodo, because he sold Baggin and everything, they're going off to Buckland. They do the shortcut to mushrooms. They see Farmer Maggot and his big Rottweilers. And they make their way to the Brandywine Bridge where they meet Mary. Mary ferries them over. They know they're being followed because when Sam left, the gaffer told them something about the big guy on the horse and such. And they finally get to Crick Hollow, Frodo's new home, and we have the conspiracy unmasked, where we find out Sam, Mary, and Pippin are coming along with Frodo. Fatty Bulger's too fat, so he's not coming. He's going to stay home and watch the house. And Frodo kind of blames Sam, and Sam's like, it wasn't entirely me. And Mary explains, Frodo, you think you're so sneaky, but, I don't know how many times I saw you with that stupid ring trying to get out of somebody's way or not be seen by somebody, and you slip the ring on and disappear. So, man, they decide to take a shortcut, which leads into a long cut. They go through the old forest, and they get killed by Old Man Willow, and are rescued by Tom Bombadil. Who is Tom Bombadil? Anybody know? Anybody have any guesses? Well, it's probably good because nobody really knows who Tom Bombadil is. The fact is, Tom Bombadil belonged in Middle-earth. Tolkien had already, by this time, by the time he publishes The Lord of the Rings, he had already written The Adventures of Tom Bombadil, a separately published book. All right? And then Tom Bombadil just kind of gets dropped in the middle of the rings. And Tom sings them out of Old Man Willow, and he takes them to his house where they meet Mary, his wife. And Tom tells them they don't have any worries, they don't have any cares while they're there. And such. And Frodo asks about Old Man Willow, and Merry and Pippin say, no, don't talk about him. Since by him. Frodo didn't. And they stay there for a while, but they don't really know how long. And one evening while they're there, they're sitting down, they're having beer, they're sitting in front of the fire, Tom's smoking, and Tom tells them stories about the old days, the battles between the men of Numenor and the men or the forces of the Witch King of Angmar and such. And they'd heard stories about the Barrow Downs, not like what they're hearing now. And as Tom sings this story, they kind of drift in and out of business, as it were. They don't literally. But Tom sings, and we hear back when only the elf sires were awake. What does that mean? That means the original elves created by the Ainur, okay, which are like the super angels, the original ones, formed out of the dust of the ground and life breathed into them and they wake up. Tom sings about wake up. And the hobbit sat still before him. I'm on page 131. Enchanted. And it seemed under the spell of his words, the wind had gone, the clouds had dried up, the day had been withdrawn. They couldn't tell whether the morning, evening of one day or many had passed. And Frodo finally speaks. Who are you, master? Tom, what? You know my name yet? That's the only answer. What the? Don't you know my name yet? That's the only answer. Frodo said, who are you? Tell me, who are you? Alone, yourself, and nameless. Now think about that question for a moment. Who are you, Frodo / reader? Alone, that is, not in relation to anybody else, yourself, that is, your deepest, innermost core, and nameless. Well, the problem is none of us are nameless, right? Where do we get our names from? Our parents. What does that mean? It means we depend on them. Depend means from, hang. We hang from our parents. They hang from their parents. To be dependent upon. To have your source in. So when Tom asks, who are you, alone and nameless? He's asking a nonsense question. Because none of us are alone, yourself, nameless. But in asking the question, Tom is suggesting that he is alone, himself, nameless. Okay? Every time I read this, I always come back to, possibly two answers. One, Tom is God. He is a theophany or an epiphany, a manifestation of God. Because God is alone, himself, nameless. Moses asked, whom shall I say sent me? I am that I am. Whoa, what the fat kind of name is that? What does that mean? I am that I am. It usually gets shortened to the I. What does that mean? I, what kind of verb is am? It's present tense. It's the conjugation for the verb to be, I, not to be. It's I am. And everything else is what? Not I am. But I exist because parent. Because something else. Okay? Now this is pretty mind-blowing when you think about it. If that is the case. I don't know that it is. Tolkien never really answers. Because in some of his letters, he talks about, Tom is kind of a pacifist spirit, and Tom is this or Tom is that. People think that Tom is a manifestation of the world, like he's an earth god. Okay? No. Well, look at what Tom says. You are young and I am old. Eldest, that's what I am. Mark my words, my friend. Tom was here before the river and the trees. He means specifically the Withywindle River and the trees. Tom remembers the first raindrop and the first acorn. We're in Twilight Zone land as a result of that. The very first raindrop. He made paths before the big people. Who are the big people? Elves and men. In other words, Tom was walking around before the elves came to be. And he saw the little people arriving. He was here before the kings and the graves and the Barrow-wights. When the elves passed westward, you got to understand the Silmarillion. When the elves first woke up, they were in Middle Earth. They passed westward, went over to the island of the gods. They lived there for a while until they screwed things up. Then they come back to Middle Earth. When the elves passed westward, Tom was here already, before the seas were built. Because in Tolkien's original in the Silmarillion, the world is flat. And literally has oceans pouring off. The world gets bent in order to stop us, who live in Middle Earth, from now being able to sail to Valinor, where they live. It gets bent like this, and now Valinor is, kind of like up here, and we don't have a means of getting up there. He knew the dark under the stars when it was fearless, before the Dark Lord came from outside. How? In the Silmarillion, the way the story occurs is you have this one guy named Eru Ilúvatar. Okay? He comes up with an idea to kind of create stuff. And so he has an idea, and from his idea spring what are called the Ainur. We would call them gods. All right? Lesser gods, let's say. And he gives them a theme, and they sing. And the theme they sing becomes all of the universe and all of history. So then he says, now look what you've sung, and he plays a video for them. And they see the beginning to the end, right? And then one of the Ainur, one of the two chief ones, a guy named Melkor, who has been contesting with Eru, okay, decides to leave the realm of the Ainur and go down into Arda, the world that they have created. This is what Tom's talking about. He says, I was here before the Dark Lord came from outside. Yet according to the Silmarillion, nothing was there. So it seems to me the only way Tom could be there is if Tom is ultimately God, who is everywhere present in all things. Okay? They keep talking and stuff. Tom says, show me the ring. Frodo pulls out the ring. And to his own astonishment, draws it out of his pocket, unfastens the ring, and hands it at once to Tom. What does Frodo do when Gandalf says, go ahead, try? Try and give away the ring. He can't. Tom, show me the precious ring. Frodo not only pulls it out, he takes off its little chain and gives it to him. Like what? Like he's been commanded to? Tom takes it, holds it in his hand, puts it to his eye and laughs, flips it with his finger, and it disappears. Frodo gives a cry. Tom hands it back to him. Frodo's like, what kind of trick is this? Goes off and puts the ring on, tries to leave. And Tom says, hey there, hey, come, Frodo, there. Where be you a-going? Old Tom's not as blind as that yet. take off your golden ring. He can see Frodo when Frodo puts the ring on. You know, a little bit later on, a lot later on. Frodo's going to put the ring on at the edge of the Ford of Bruinen. And he's going to see, getting my names all mixed up. He's going to see, it's not Legolas, it's not Gildor. Glorfindel, thank you. He's going to see Glorfindel, Gandalf says, as he is on the other side. On the other side of what? The other side of reality. He's going to see Glorfindel as he exists in what we would call the unseen world. And how does he see Glorfindel? Like a flaming light. Okay? When Frodo puts the ring on Weathertop, what does he see? He sees the Black Riders clearly. Does he see Aragorn? Does he see Frodo, Merry and Pippin and Sam? No. Why? Because when he puts the ring on, he's now in this other realm. Tom sees him wherever he is. What's that tell us about Tom? He lives in both realms. I think this is another indication, at the very least, of Tom's supernatural character. Maybe he's one of these, or maybe he's this ultimately. But if he is this ultimately, why doesn't he just, and the ring be gone? Okay, just let that question linger for a while, because it's going to be dealt with in the Council of Elrond. So, Tom gives them directions on how to make their way through the Barrow Downs. And, of course, what do? They don't follow those directions. And so they get captured by a Barrow-wight. What is a Barrow-wight? Some kind of creature that inhabits a burial mound. Well, what do we mean by a burial mound? I wish I had a computer in this room. A burial mound is exactly what it sounds like, a mound. Go to England. I say take my Harry Potter course, but it's full. There are all kinds of other courses, though. Go to England, take a trip to Stonehenge, look at the pretty rocks. They're pretty big, they're cool. You can't go up and touch them, unless you're blind. Or it's Midsummer Day, or it's Midwinter's Day, whichever the two. Look at the rocks, and then turn your back to the rocks. And walk around Stonehenge with your back to the rocks, looking off in the distance. And on almost every degree of the compass, meaning 360 degrees, you will see a mound off in the distance. Those are burial mounds. Okay? Each one of them, at some time, probably had a body. Some of them still do. There's still being many of them excavated. They do annual excavations at Stonehenge, and they find new stuff every year. I don't mean new stuff, people go in and bury new stuff. They're finding old stuff that hasn't been found before. A barrow is a huge mound buried over a body. If you go to Sutton Hoo in England today, you'll find barrows that were raised over. Like one that was discovered in 1938 was a 90-foot longboat. Okay? And all kinds of treasure in it. So they get captured by the Barrow-wight, and they see some things. And Frodo remembers Tom's song. And he sings, and Tom comes and rescues them. And they get brought out of the barrow, and Frodo, Merry and Pippin are wearing strange clothes. And Tom says, "You're not going to find your own clothes." And so what does he do? Tom pulls all quote-unquote treasure out of the barrel and leaves it on the hillside. But he also gives them swords from it. And we're told at the bottom of 145, he chose a dagger, long, leaf-shaped, and keen, of marvelous workmanship, damask with serpent forms in red and gold. They gleamed as he drew them from their black sheaths, wrought of some strange metal, light and strong. and set with many fiery stones. Okay? And Tom, tell me who made these swords? Men of Westernessa. Numenor men, in other words. And were forged to fight against the forces of the evil king of Carndum in the land of Angmar. In other words, they were forged to fight against the forces of the witch king of Angmar, whom we will meet. Because the witch king of Angmar is the king of the Nazgul. He's the captain of the Lord of the Nine. It's significant that they get these weapons from here because weapons are forged with spells of power on them. All right? And one of them is going to be used in the defeat of the Witch King of Angmar. Only one of these weapons would work. All right? So, they go off on their way, and they make their way to the Prancing Pony. And they meet Barlaam Butterbur, who's too busy for his own good. Them to their rooms, and they go to the common hall where people are drinking and eating and such. And Pippin's had a bit to drink, and he's standing on the table, and he's dancing and starting to talk a little bit too much. And Frodo is sidled up next to a shifty-looking guy in the back who says his name is Strider, and he tells Frodo, "You better stop your young friend." Frodo sees Pippin, and he hears Pippin, and Frodo kind of goes and pushes Pippin off the table, and he starts to sing and dance. And while he's singing and dancing, he puts his finger in his pocket and disappears. Frodo, invisible now, makes his way back over to Strider, and everybody's surprised. And they're like, "Where is he? Where is he?" And Frodo says, I'm over here with Mr. Strider. And Strider asks, page 161, "Why did you do that? Worse than anything your friends could have said. You have put your foot in it. Or should I say your finger?" And then he addresses Frodo by the name Mr. Baggins. So Frodo knows that this guy knows something because he's been going by the name Underhill. So they make their way to their rooms, and Strider comes in, and Strider says, who he is, but he doesn't give any information other than, "I'm Strider." And Barlaam Butterbur comes in and gives them a letter from Gandalf that was written mid-year's day, Shire year 1418. That is, it's the middle of summer when he gives them that letter. When he writes the letter. And Gandalf tells Frodo in the letter, "Leave. Leave the Shire now. Make for Rivendell." But then he also says, "You might meet somebody along the way, a friend of mine. His name is Strider, but that's not his real name. His real name is Aragorn." And then, because, everybody writes poetry, he has this little poem with his name. "All that is gold does not glitter, not all those who wander are lost. The old that is strong does not wither, deep roots are not reached by the frost. From the ashes of fire shall be woken, a light from the shadows shall spring. Renewed shall be blade that was broken, the crownless again shall be king." All right? And Frodo says, "Why didn't you tell us who you were before?" And Aragorn, I didn't know about the letter." And he says, "Would you have believed me? Anyways, I knew nothing of this letter. Said I had to study you, and I had to convince you." All right? And Sam still isn't sure it's him. Sam says, "How do we know you're the Strider that Gandalf speaks about? You never mentioned Gandalf till this letter came out. You might be a play-acting spy for all I can say, trying to get us to go with you. You might have done it in the real Strider and took his clothes. What have you to say to that?" Okay, now keep in mind, how big is Strider? Is Sam? Not that tall. How big is Strider? He's probably about 6'2". Okay. 3 foot 6'2", and he's challenging him. You might not be the real Strider. You might have killed him. Now what have you got to say? It's there on the X-ray, Sam. That you are a stout fellow, but I'm afraid my only answer to you, Sam Gamgee, is this. If I'd killed the real Strider, I could kill you. And I should have killed you already without so much talk. And he stood up and he seemed to grow taller. Well, that's usually what happens when people stand up. But he seemed, when he stood up, to be even taller than he was, in other words. Okay? And Frodo says, you know, I believed you were a friend from the beginning. You frightened me several times, but, you know, I think the servants of the enemy would feel better. And Strider's like, oh, okay, I get it. I see. I look foul and feel fair. Is that it, really, Frodo? Is that how you make friends? You tell them they're ugly, but they feel nice? Because how should Strider appear? He shouldn't be Viggo Mortensen. He's too pretty. He should look fouler. And I don't just mean splash a little dirt on him. Okay? I'm not saying he should be ugly. Okay? He shouldn't be disformed. But he shouldn't be gorgeous. Let me put it that way. Here's who I think of. Look him up. Here's who I think of as Strider. Whenever I read these books, if you're familiar with this actor, Sam Elliott. Okay? If for no other reason, his voice is perfect for Strider. It's this deep, rough, gritty voice. Okay? If you ever saw the film, We Were Young Once, or We Were Soldiers Once. Can't remember the exact title. It's a Mel Gibson film about a lieutenant colonel in Vietnam, early in Vietnam. Sam Elliott plays the sergeant major in there. He's about as gruff and grizzled and battle-hardened as you can be. Somebody's pulled it up. If you've got a computer.
He's got the mustache.
Yeah, he's got a great stash. But, I mean, his face looks like he's been through a lot. Okay? How old is Aragorn? He's 87. He's 87. Now, at the beginning, by the end of the tale, 88, because it's less than a year. Okay? We're going to hear Aragorn talk about, other characters. For example, he's going to meet, and he's going to say, yeah, I know your uncle. I knew your father. I knew your father's father. And we're going to go, what? How does that? Because he doesn't look it. He's not walking around putting his teeth in. Okay? That kind of 87. Men of Numenor live much longer, maintain their virility, let's say, much longer. So, he offers his sword, which isn't really much of an offer because it's broken. He says, I'll help you. Okay? Merry comes in, talks about the Black Riders. Aragorn helps them out after a knife in the dark, where we find out what happens to their beds in the middle of the night. And where they had planned to leave in stealth early in the morning, instead they're leaving. It's like 10 a.m. The whole village of Bree comes out. Sam hits Bill Ferny in the apple and such when they get the horse from him. The pony, Bill. Sorry. So, they make their way from Bree, and they're heading towards Weathertop. And they've got to go through all kinds of horrible conditions. I mean, midges and such. And page 185, Strider tells them they're making their way towards Weathertop, and he tells them what it used to be called and how it was a watchtower kind of place. And suddenly Sam starts singing a song. Gil-galad was an elven king, of him the harper sadly sing, the last whose realm was fair and free between the mountains and the sea. His sword was long, his lance was keen, his shining helm afar was seen. The countless stars of heaven's field were mirrored in his silver shield. But long ago he rode away, and where he dwelleth none can say, for into a star in Mordor, where the shadows are. And the others are like, more. And Sam, sorry, it's all I know. And Strider says, Bilbo didn't make that up. Because Sam says he got it from Bilbo. He says that's all part of a much longer lay, which you have to go and read the 12-volume History of Middle-earth, or one of them, to find the longer lay. I'm sure Christopher Tolkien will probably come out with it in another year or so, because he's taking individual stories and publishing them separately. So they make their way to Weathertop. They see there's been some kind of battle there. And Aragorn interprets it as it means that Gandalf was here on October the 3rd. It's now October the 6th. Okay? And as they're kind of preparing their little camp, Merry says, tell us more about Gil-galad. And Strider says, I know a little bit about Gil-galad. And Frodo says, I know what Gandalf told me. Gil-galad was the last of the great elf kings. With Elendil, he went to the land of, and Aragorn shuts him down. No, don't talk about Mordor because it's dark, and we know there are Black Riders around. So instead, Strider says, I'm going to tell you the tale of Tunuviel. Okay? And he tells us, it's a long tale, no one knows the end, but it is a fair tale, though sad, as are all the tales of Middle-earth. And they lift up your hearts. Okay, notice that. All the tales of Middle-earth are sad. Why? Why can't there be any happy tales? Why aren't there any Disney stories in Middle-earth? Well, here's why I think it is. Tolkien says in that Beowulf essay that I referred to that all the literature of the Anglo-Saxons that survives, that is, all the literature written in Anglo-Saxon England from about 500 to 1100 AD, it's all ultimately about one theme: the death of man and all his works. Okay? It's about the death of humanity and all our works. Well, what are all our works? All our literature, all our culture, all our art, all our poetry, all our buildings, all our civilization. All of Anglo-Saxon literature, according to Tolkien, is about the impermanence of life here. Okay? I think to understand Tolkien, you have to understand that that idea is not only central, he says, to all of Old English, but I think it's central to this. Even when we get to the very end, Sam goes back, Rosie welcomes him into the house, puts a little Eleanor on his lap, hands him a beer and a pipe. Ultimately, that will not last. Okay? So he tells them the tale of Luthien and Beren. Luthien, an elf, but not just an elf. Her father is an elf. Her mother is a Maya. Her father is Thingol, and her mother is Melian. She is a Maya. She's one of these. Lower rank. Okay, you have the Ainur, and then you have the Maiar. Okay? These would be like, I don't know, cherubim and seraphim, and these would be like your everyday run-of-the-mill average angel. Okay? She's one of these. They have Luthien. So, she's half elf, half goddess, half supernatural, whatever you want to call it. And he tells the story of Luthien and Beren. Okay? Beren is a man. Beren goes through hell and back to get a Silmaril so that he can marry Luthien. Why? Because her father's for lack of a, well, I won't use that word. Her father's a not very nice person who says, unless I have a Silmaril in my hand, you will never marry my daughter. So Beren goes to Satan's kingdom, Melkor, Morgoth, cuts the Silmaril from his crown, takes it, gets his hand bitten off, dies, is brought back from the dead by the gods, He and Luthien get to have a few years, marry, bliss, etc., and then they go off and die. Luthien, I'm giving you the real bad short version. Luthien, in doing that, has a choice to make. Will she die with Beren and suffer the fate of men, or will she go on like an elf and keep on ticking? She chooses to die with her husband and to suffer the fate of men. What that means is she is forever, for all eternity, sundered from her father and from all elven kind. Remember the other day I said that in Tolkien's kind of cosmology, elves are tied to this world? That at the end of time, when this world is done away with, new heavens, new earth, all that stuff from Book of Revelation, the elves will be gone. We will not be. Okay? Luthien will not be gone. She will be with humanity. It's through Luthien's line that you get the half-elven. Half men, half elf, because she marries Beren, and they then have children. Eärendil. And we're going to hear Elrond tell us some of this. Here's the kicker. In The Lord of the Rings, we replay this. Because we have Arwen, not Liv Tyler. Okay, don't make that mistake. And Aragorn, man, elf. All right? And here's the even better kicker. Go to Wolvercote Cemetery today. Go to Tolkien's grave. Look at his gravestone, and you see Edith Pratt Tolkien, John Ronald Reuel Tolkien, Luthien underneath her name, and Beren underneath his name. This story is their love story. Pretty powerful when you read the story in the Silmarillion. I mean, it's one of his best stories. I'm surprised his son hasn't published it yet as a separate. So Aragorn goes on and he tells them the story. He paraphrases it. We have the Black Riders come. Frodo gives in to the temptation of the ring. He hears, put on the ring, put on the ring, put on the ring. He puts on the ring. Lo and behold, he can see the Black Riders. He lashes out with Gilthoniel. He gets stabbed in the arm. The blade breaks. He slashes, the Black Rider's cloak. And then we get chapter 12, Flight to the Ford. I'm going to attempt to do in 7 minutes. So, right after Frodo gets stabbed, he's sick. Aragorn goes off to try to find some Athelas. And they make their way because they still have about a 2-week journey to get from where they are to Rivendell. And as they're going, they run into some old stone trolls from The Hobbit. Okay? They pause there. Sam gives a rendition of a story. And they meet Glorfindel. Frodo asks, bottom of 209, has Gandalf arrived? Glorfindel says no. So Glorfindel kind of leads him. He puts Frodo on his horse, as he can walk. And as they make their way, they're just about to the ford of Bruinen. And they realize they're now being followed, that the Black Riders are coming. So Glorfindel speaks to Frodo, tells him to ride. Frodo doesn't ride. So Glorfindel speaks horsey language to his horse. And the horse bolts like a bolt from a crossbow. Frodo makes it to the river. He goes all the way across. And what does he do? He turns around. He's still on the horse. He turns around and he says to the Black Riders, all 9 of them now are coming. Go back. Go back to the land of Mordor and follow me no more. The riders halt, but Frodo had not the power of Bombadil. duh. His enemies laugh at him and they say, come back, come back. Go back, he whispers. The ring, the ring. And the first of the riders, the leader, steps into the water, not knowing, we don't know this either until later, that Elrond has put an enchantment on the water that anything foul and dirty that steps in, it's going to get washed away. And Frodo sees the leader come into the water, and he says, by Elbereth and Luthien the Fair, you shall have neither the ring nor me. Well, who's Elbereth? The queen of these. Because over Middle Earth, you have what are called, they are still these. Okay? When they come down into what's called Arda, or Earth, they take new names. Now they're called the Valar. And you have Manwë, who's the king of the gods, and Elbereth, who's the queen of the gods. She doesn't have a little up there. You can almost think of her, and I'm saying almost very intentionally, don't equate them, but you can almost think of her as Mary. She's like an image of Mary, the Queen of Heaven, Catholic thinking. Okay? So when he says by Elbereth and Luthien the Fair, he is swearing by the Queen of Heaven. You're not going to get this ring. Okay? The leader sits up, or stands up in his stirrups, raises his hand, and what happens? Frodo can't speak anymore, and his sword breaks. Where did he get the sword? From the barrow. This was one of the swords forged by the men of Westernessa, and it breaks. Now, this tells us something about the power of this guy. Notice, he doesn't speak. He merely raises his hand. But at that moment, there comes a roaring, and the flood comes down, and Frodo sees, with his last failing senses, that beyond the riders on the shore a shining figure of white, and behind it ran little small shadowy forms waving flames that flared red. And Frodo passes out of consciousness. Okay. What he saw, next chapter, was Glorfindel. Gandalf says, as he exists on the other side. He doesn't mean on the other side of the river. On the other side where? The other side of reality. Or Glorfindel as he would appear in Valinor, if you want. A mighty elf lord. Well, what were the other little pinpricks of light? Those little swords of Westernessa. Keep in mind they were forged for what reason? To fight the Witch King of Angmar. There's the Witch King of Angmar standing in the water. Kind of like when Sting is around orcs. What does it do? It glows blue. Okay? Why? Because it's forged to kill orcs. Okay, we'll just stop there. We'll pick up with mini meetings, and then we will attempt, to get all this done on Thursday. I say attempt because we'll spend most of the class on the Council of Elrond. So I know it's not going to happen.